Imagine you're serving on the safety team one Sunday morning when a woman that you've seen at church for years quietly pulls you aside before service. She tells you her ex-husband has been threatening her and she's afraid to show up today. What do you do? That's what I want to talk about today.
If God is for me, who's against me? Nobody is. I'm so sick of the...
Welcome to Sanctuary Peacemakers. This is your frontline guide to safety and security inside houses of worship with your host, Unity.
Not today. No, not today. No, not today. No, not today.
Now, let's enter the crucible of our discussion.
Not today.
Welcome back to Sanctuary Peacemakers. Today I want to talk about what happens when domestic violence follows somebody into church. When people hear the words domestic violence, they usually picture something happening inside a home, behind closed doors, between two people who know each other. Because of that, it's easy for a church safety ministry to think of it as a family issue, a counseling issue, or something for law enforcement to deal with away from the church. But domestic violence does not always stay at home. It can follow someone to work, to a child's school, to a family gathering, and even into a church. An abusive spouse or former partner may know where the victim attends, what time the service begins, where the children's ministry meets, which vehicle the person drives, and which entrance the family normally uses. In many cases, the abuser does not need to conduct any complicated surveillance. They already know the routine because they were once part of it. That is what makes domestic violence different from many of the threats that a safety ministry prepares for. The person creating the danger may not be a stranger. They may be known by the congregation. They may have attended the church for years. They may know the pastor, the building, and the people serving on the safety ministry. They may walk through the front door and be greeted by name. And the victim may be sitting only a few rows away. This is not a rare issue. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's 2023 and 2024 National Inmate Partner in Sexual Violence Survey, more than 1 in 3 women and more than 1 in 6 men in the United States have experienced contact sexual violence, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime. That means almost every church, whether it realizes it or not, is likely to include people who have experienced some form of intimate partner violence. Some may have left the relationship years ago. Some may still be living in it. Others may be quietly trying to decide what to do next. Domestic violence is not limited to physical assault. The National Domestic Violence Hotline describes it as a pattern of behavior used to gain or maintain power and control over a partner. That control can involve threats, intimidation, financial control, isolation, stalking, humiliation, or using children as leverage. Physical violence may be part of the pattern, but it is not the only part. That matters inside a church because the warning sign may not be someone arriving with a weapon or making an open threat. It may begin with a person repeatedly showing up where their former partner is. It may be somebody sitting in the parking lot watching an entrance, asking other members questions, or trying to pass a message through a mutual friend. Each individual action may appear harmless when viewed by itself, but together they may show a pattern. A United States Department of Justice report on stalking noted that 81% of people stalked by a current or former intimate partner had also been physically assaulted by that partner. The report also warned that when physical abuse and stalking occur together, the danger of further violence, including homicide, increases. So when someone tells church leadership or the safety ministry that a former partner has been following them, contacting them repeatedly, or appearing unexpectedly, that should not be brushed off as relationship drama. It may be easy to underestimate the danger when the person making the report appears calm. Victims often learn to function while afraid. They may go to work and take care of their children, attend church, and speak normally while carrying a threat that has become part of everyday life. They may also minimize what is happening. That does not necessarily mean the concern is unimportant. It may mean they have been dealing with the behavior for so long that it has started to feel normal. The church's first responsibility is to listen. That sounds simple, but churches do not always do it well. Sometimes the first response is to ask what the victim did to cause the argument. Sometimes leaders immediately begin talking about reconciliation or forgiveness or keeping the marriage together before they understand the danger. A victim may be encouraged to return home, meet privately with the abuser, or participate in couples counseling when the situation has not been properly assessed. This is where good intentions can cause real harm. A church should not assume that every troubled relationship is a disagreement between two equal participants. Abuse is about power and control. Treating it as a communication problem can place the victim in the same room with the person they fear and give the abuser another opportunity to intimidate or manipulate them. The church does not have to decide the entire future of the relationship or conduct its own criminal investigation, but it does need to take the concern seriously and avoid forcing the victim into a confrontation. The National Domestic Violence Hotline has warned that abusive partners may even use religious language to maintain that control. They may tell a victim that divorce is sinful, that submission means enduring abuse, or that speaking about the violence will damage the church or embarrass the family. When the church leaders repeat those ideas without understanding the circumstances, they can unintentionally reinforce the abuser's control. Supporting a marriage does not mean supporting abuse. Forgiveness does not require removing boundaries. And concern for someone's soul does not require giving that person access to the individual they have threatened. When a victim tells a church about a concern, the response should begin with what is needed for safety. That may include asking whether there have been threats or stalking or weapons, violations of a protection order, or recent escalation. The church may need to know what the person looks like, what the vehicle they drive, and whether they are likely to arrive during a service. Those details should not become general church gossip. The information should be limited to the people who genuinely need it. The pastor, the safety leader, possibly children's ministry leader, or a few other responsible individuals may need enough information to recognize the danger and respond. The entire congregation does not need to know the victim's story. Confidentiality, however, does not mean secrecy at the expense of safety. If there is an immediate threat, law enforcement needs to be contacted. If children are involved, mandatory reporting laws may apply depending on the circumstances and the people receiving the information. Churches should understand the laws in their own state and seek professional guidance rather than guessing. A protection order should also be taken seriously, but the safety ministry should understand what it actually says. Orders vary state by state and case by case. The church should not attempt to interpret complicated legal questions on its own. If a person provides a copy, leadership should coordinate with local law enforcement or legal counsel so the church knows what it can and what it should do. The existence of a protection order does not create a physical barrier around the victim. It gives law enforcement and the courts a legal tool, but a determined person can still choose to violate it. The safety ministry should not treat that paper as if it makes planning unnecessary. The danger can be especially serious during or after a separation. Separation does not always end the abuser's desire for control. In fact, it may challenge it. The former partner may begin showing up at places where they expect to find the victim, including at church. A church can become attractive to an abuser because the schedule is predictable, the victim may feel safe enough to attend regularly, and the children may be present. The abuser may also believe that church members will hesitate to create a scene or call the police. They may attempt to use the congregation as a source of information. A well-meaning member may tell an estranged spouse that the victim is at the second service, that the children are downstairs, or that the family left through another door. The member may believe that they are helping resolve a misunderstanding when in reality they may be helping somebody locate a victim who is trying to stay safe. When the church has been told that there is a domestic violence or stalking concern, the people who need to know should understand that they must not share schedules, locations, phone numbers, or other personal information. They should not agree to carry messages or confirm whether the person is present. If the alleged abuser arrives, the response will depend on the circumstances. Someone who is legally permitted to be there and is behaving peacefully presents a different situation from someone who is violating an order, making threats, searching the building, or refusing to leave. The safety ministry should avoid turning the lobby into a counseling room while emotions are high. This is not the right moment to bring both people together and encourage them to talk it out. The immediate concern is preventing contact, keeping the victim and children safe, and determining whether law enforcement is needed. If the person becomes threatening or refuses a lawful request to leave, the church should not allow fear of embarrassment to delay a call to the police. Churches sometimes hesitate because they do not want flashing lights outside during a Sunday service or because a person is a longtime member. Familiarity does not reduce danger. The statistics on intimate partner homicide make that very clear. The CDC reports that about 1 in 5 homicide victims in the United States are killed by an intimate partner, and more than half of female homicide victims are killed by a current or former male intimate partner. On a separate CDC review of nearly 4,000 female intimate partner homicides reported from 2018 through 2021, roughly 2/3 involved a firearm. Those numbers are not included to create panic. They're a reminder that domestic violence can become deadly and that the presence of a weapon changes the level of concern. If church leadership knows that someone has made threats, has access to firearms, has stalked the victim, or has recently escalated their behavior, the response should not consist only of watching the door a little more closely. Law enforcement and a qualified domestic violence advocate may need to be involved in developing a safety plan. That plan should be centered on the victim's actual circumstances. One person may need an escort to and from their vehicle. Another may need to attend a different service temporarily. The children's ministry may need clear pickup restrictions. The safety team may need a recent photograph of the person of concern. In some cases, trained advocates and law enforcement will be better equipped to address the risks beyond church property. The church should support that process without trying to control it. Victims of domestic violence have already had someone attempting to control their choices. Church leaders should be careful not to replace the abuser's control with their own. Telling someone you have to leave tonight may sound decisive, but leaving can create additional danger and practical problems involving housing, money, transportation, children, and legal issues. The better approach is to listen, provide support, connect the person with qualified resources, and respond immediately when there is a direct threat. A personalized safety plan is more useful than a simple command. The church should also think about safety of the wider congregation. Domestic violence incidents do not always remain between two people. Children, relatives, friends, safety volunteers, and bystanders can become involved. If an armed person enters a crowded church looking for one individual, everyone nearby may be placed at risk. That does not mean the victim is bringing danger into the church or should be treated as a problem. The responsibility belongs to the person choosing to abuse and choosing violence. A victim should not be isolated from the church community because somebody else may behave dangerously. The goal is to make it possible for the victim to remain a part of the church while reasonable safety measures are put into place. There is also a pastoral responsibility here. Someone experiencing abuse may need spiritual support, but spiritual support should work alongside practical help rather than replace it. Prayer matters. Counseling may matter. So do advocates, shelters, police reports, attorneys, medical care, and protection orders. Telling someone that the church will pray while ignoring a credible threat is not enough. At the same time, the safety ministry needs to remain within its role. Safety volunteers are not detectives, marriage counselors, or judges. They should document concerning behavior, preserve relevant messages or video when appropriate, communicate with leadership, and contact law enforcement when the situation requires it. They should not conduct surveillance of their own, threaten the alleged abuser, or make promises they cannot keep. Domestic violence is complicated because it involves relationships, emotions, history, children, finances, faith, and fear. There may be facts the church does not know, but complexity is not an excuse for doing nothing. A church may never be able to remove every risk, but what it can do is build a culture where a person feels safe reporting a concern, where leaders understand that abuse is not simply a marital disagreement, and where the safety ministry knows that a familiar face can still present a real threat. This does not require the church to assume that every estranged spouse is violent. It requires the church to pay attention to behavior, threats, stalking, legal restrictions, and escalation. Church leaders should build relationships with domestic violence organizations before an emergency. Safety ministries should know who to call for guidance. Pastors should be willing to admit when a situation has moved beyond pastoral counseling and requires specialized help. The church can be an important source of support for someone who has been isolated and controlled. It can offer community, practical assistance, spiritual care, and a place where the victim is believed. But to provide that support, the church must be willing to recognize that domestic violence does not always stop at the front door. Sometimes it walks into the lobby wearing a familiar face. Sometimes it sits quietly in the parking lot. Sometimes it asks innocent-sounding questions about where someone is. And sometimes The warning comes directly from a person who has gathered the courage to say, I am afraid they are going to come here. When someone says that, listen. Do not turn it into gossip. Do not rush into a confrontation. Do not force reconciliation. Take the concern seriously, involve the right people, and prepare to protect the person without taking the control away from them. A church should be a refuge. Making it one requires more than just kind words. It requires wisdom, boundaries, communication, and the willingness to act when a private pattern of abuse becomes a public safety concern.
Fear you are not welcome here.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sanctuary Peacemakers. If today's conversation added value, be sure to tune in next week as we continue equipping and encouraging those who serve and protect houses of worship. A special thanks to Haley Jones for granting permission to use her song Not Today as our introduction, and to Leslie Jones for allowing us to use the song Sound Mind as our outro music. As always, y'all stay safe and y'all stay blessed.